Hello, salam, shalom, namaste, sat sri akal, aloha, hola, ciao, bonjour, buna, privyet, mabuhay, jean, dobre, and I hope I didn't forget any of my usual greetings. But basically, welcome to everybody who has joined us, and I'm so happy you've joined us. And I know you'll be so happy you've joined us because we have a very cool guest with us today, and that is Dr. Toni Liu, aka Dr. Toni, who's a nomadic cartoonist, physician, educator, relationship coach, mental health advocate, and an anti-tiger mom. How cool is that? Welcome, Dr. Toni.
Thank you so much.
Yes. And Dr. Tony, please tell us more about who you are and what you do.
Oh, I think you summarized me pretty well. So I'm Dr. Tooney, a cartoonist. That's my main essence of who I am. I am an artist, but I used to be a physician in women's health and primary care. And I've really incorporated that now into being more of a healer of mental health, energy healing, relationship coaching, self-love, really just helping people come home to their best health and their most authentic lives after going through my journey of really finding my authentic self as well and going through
Wow.
my
Oh,
rock bottom.
oh gosh. I mean, you do so many interesting, amazing things, and I can't wait to dig deeper into what your journey has been. So tell me a little bit more about your journey. Like, you started out as a physician, at least in the context of your professional context. How, like, what motivated you down that path?
Yeah, great question. I am a Chinese American immigrant, so I was politely, but not so politely, pushed into medicine by my well-meaning parents.
Mm,
That's the term tiger mom, where it's a mother who has very high expectations and can even be authoritarian, meaning she thinks she knows best. So my parents really thought they knew best in
mm,
what they did, but realizing I was always an artist at heart, I was always
mm,
drawing, and that was never nurtured as a kid. So I just put my head down and was obedient until my 30s, uh, doing that path. But I really burned out and hit such a rock bottom in my mental health where
mm,
I really didn't want, it felt like I was already dead. What's the point of living, doing that life? And
mm,
so I'm so much happier now that I've made the change to honor who I truly am. 7 years
mm,
ago, I took that leap to leave the medicine behind and really find my own soul's true expression. And I found that I do really care. There was a reason I went into medicine. That's because I do really care about healing and helping others and just not in the boxes of Western medicine, which sometimes I feel like
mm.
is making people sicker than actually better.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And not Chinese, but I'm half Indian, half Pakistani, and we have a similar like thing in our culture. And I think it's true in a lot of Asian cultures in general, where
Mm.
I mean, there's so many layers to like the parent-child relationship that can make it like really challenging. But definitely the when it comes to profession, what profession you're going to have, if any at all. Um, like for us, a lot of it is actually very impacted by class. Um, so if you are middle class or if you are lower class, but your parents are trying to raise the family up to the status of middle class, then the goal is always well, we have the options, three options. You can either become a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer. And it's
Yes.
like whatever you can get into
Yes.
from those three professions. And actually, like in my case, also the one other layer that I dealt with was interesting because the men and boys in my family face that pressure a lot. Um, and I'm talking about in my extended family because I lived as part of a joint family, and I saw the pressure that the boys in my age group were going through. But interestingly, for me, it wasn't like that because I was a girl. And
Mm,
like for me, the expectation was that you get trained from when you're young to learn to take care of the house and sort of
mhm,
become more of that nurturer and, just get ready to get married and have kids and live that kind of family life. And in some ways, so it's like I didn't have to worry about pursuing any kind of career. I didn't have to, like if I didn't want to take my studies seriously in terms of going to school or pursuing higher education, I didn't face any of that
mm,
kind of pressure. But, I would say like for me, the social duties that I was, or the role that I was being expected to step into, like for me, that was a big, like, no, I felt challenged to step into that role because I had really bad mental health. I was very socially challenged.
mm.
And, so, there, and, like seriously, if I, like that pressure of you have to fit into this role that's been determined for you, it does make you feel like either like you're going to go crazy or you are going crazy because you just find your if you find yourself challenged with it like I did, it was not a happy time either.
Yeah, I relate to that. I had difficulty socially as well and fitting in and feeling like I didn't belong. We also moved a lot when I was growing up too,
Mm,
so. But yeah, I think it's challenging for anyone to be forced into a box and not having that autonomy to really choose for themselves.
yeah, yeah. Oh, and it's what was it for you that you found particularly challenging about being forced to fit in the box?
Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode. Hope you're getting value out of it. For your information, this episode has been sponsored by the Happiness 101 program. Are you a change maker, coach, trainer, or healer? Are chains of fear holding you back from making the impact and income you desire? Using a unique combination of positive psychology and the spiritual wisdom of our most effective change makers, the Happiness 101 program helps you break through your limiting beliefs and manifest the abundance and success you desire with fun and ease. Interested? Book a free Happiness 101 exploration call with me, your happiness expert, Samia Bano. Just use my online calendar link in the show notes. Now, back to the show.
Yeah, I think it was just being told to hide most of who I
Mm,
am because I had all these creative dreams and niche interests like anime
mm,
and even, for example, yeah, writing stories about fictional characters. There were all these sides of myself I felt like I couldn't show to my family
mm,
or they were unprofessional. And And being forced to do something that didn't truly align with my values was also
Mm,
really hard. I think, yeah, those were the main reasons, but I think it's the hiding, the not being authentic. It's really exhausting pretending to be someone you're not, just
I
to
can
please
tell.
others.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That, uh, mm, yes, that pretending to be someone else. Like for me, I did that too. And to me, it was like such a like a feeling of burden, like you're carrying this big secret almost kind of a burden, and it
Hmm.
just feels so dark and so heavy, and it makes you like really question. Like I remember like really, I think I was maybe in my late teens when I sort of came to this realization that not only did I need to feel loved, but I needed to feel unconditionally loved. And I was
Hmm.
not going to get that unconditional love as long as I felt like I had to hide my truth, my true
Hmm.
self, and my truths, whatever they were that I was hiding. And
Hmm.
it was such a depressing realization to have that I couldn't experience unconditional love because I
Hmm.
couldn't tell the truth about myself,
Hmm.
and oh my gosh, I think that was part of, like, for me when I was heading to my pet, that was part of what took me there.
Hmm. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I think it's the fear as well of not being unconditionally loved. But we actually don't know that if we
Mm.
never show our true self. But sometimes there are enough, I guess, signs or hints. Like my parents had used language that made it sound like, well, if you don't do medicine, we're going to disown you, or you can't
Mm.
rely on us because if you choose art, you'll be living in a box and be a
Mm.
burden to us. And
Mm.
that was the last thing I wanted. But in
Mm.
hindsight, I realized that sort of conditional love isn't healthy, and making a child feel like a burden also isn't healthy either.
Yeah. And sometimes it's I mean, they don't mean it literally. I mean, not that they don't mean it literally, but they don't mean it like I know, like in my experience, push come to shove, a lot of parents, like my parents, for example, they do love me unconditionally. Like when I came out in my truth and stuff, they
Mhm.
actually did embrace me, and like they were like, no, of course, we're gonna continue to love you.
Mm.
And so, like, whatever the fears were that were expressed by them and that were harbored by me in terms of what would happen if the truth came out, a lot of it was, it was that it was fear, and not to say that it was completely false, that it wasn't based in any kind of reality, but that there's more to reality than whatever it was that gave generated that fear for my parents and other people in the family for that matter.
Mhm.
So yeah. um, and another thing I was like feeling a bit curious about is, like, in your case, like these you use the terminology of like these side passions that you had. And
Mhm.
like I've seen with um folks, other folks, that as long as it's like, okay, as long as you're being obedient to the overall path that's been laid out to you. It's okay if you take some time on the side to do whatever it is that you want to follow as a side passion. Not just make sure you don't do it to an extent that it interferes with your career that you're supposed to work on. Did you try doing that? Just doing your passion stuff like as a hobby on the side in your free time and seeing if that would be enough for you as opposed to like having to leave
Hmm.
the MD profession?
Yeah, I did try that, and I was just so exhausted because when you
Mm,
live so much of your life pretending and as a mask, there was very little energy that I had for
yeah,
my creativity in my free time. I could barely just keep up with my self-care, eating
yeah.
nutritious foods and exercising and sleeping enough, especially when I was working 80 hours a week.
Ah,
It's violating labor laws, but the medical field doesn't care.
ah,
Even after you graduate medical school and residency training, a lot of doctors are still working
yeah.
way more than 40 hours a week because of all of the
Mm.
paperwork and documentation and answering patient messages. So it's really hard to find a work-life balance in
Oh,
many fields. And same with many
yes.
other jobs too, in corporate. I mean, there's this
Yeah,
unhealthy standard in society that it's noble to of
yeah.
overworking ourselves, whether it's for our job or for
Mm.
our families, if we're in the role of caregiver or
Yeah,
homemaker. And it leaves very little time for ourselves, let alone our passions, and
yeah,
it just makes life really even more difficult than it needs to be. So believe me, I have tried finding that balance and doing what I love. But when
yeah,
you have to work, that's most of your waking hours. That's a
yeah.
third of your life. And you sleep for hopefully 8 hours a day. So that is at least half of your waking hours, if not most of your waking hours.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that because I I mean some people manage to make that a strategy that works for them. But you're so right. For so many, that is not even a workable strategy. It's not even remotely realistic. And yet, when someone expresses, their discontent and so forth, that is oftentimes the solution they're offered. And it's like, no, that's not enough. That's not enough. And you have to allow people the freedom to decide for themselves when that may be enough and when it may not be enough. And it's again, it just comes down to like being able to choose for yourself.
And some people find a good balance in working part-time, but
Hmm.
that can be hard because a lot of jobs don't give you health
Yeah,
insurance if you only work part-time. And
yeah,
then if it is really draining, it can impact you. For example, I felt like I lost my creativity for the whole
yeah.
decade I was in medicine. I just felt like I guess it's part of growing up and being an adult to
Mm,
just lose that level of creativity I used to have. And it really took me some time to get it back, almost a year of
mm,
allowing myself to rest and reconnect and build those muscles back up again. And so I
yeah.
encourage everyone to take that time for themselves. Save up,
Mm,
take a sabbatical if you can, or cut down your hours or find some way to do that because it can take a
yeah.
while to recover your mental health.
Right. Tell me a little bit more about this part of your journey when you took this time for yourself and you started the journey of recovering and healing. Um, what were some really like important lessons that you learned in that context that you can share with our listeners in that context of how you help yourself heal and recover?
Yeah, absolutely. It was really learning to be gentle with myself and
Mm,
doing a lot of tuning in on what helped me feel alive again.
Mm,
Because I think many people can relate when you are in a state of deep depression, it's hard, you can feel numb, things that you used to enjoy you may not enjoy them anymore. I thankfully didn't get to that bad of a place, but I think certain things were muted, and I felt like I had to rediscover what brought me that joy again.
yeah,
And just giving myself permission to try whatever I was curious about, what made my heart sing. Changing my environment really helped too. When I say I'm a
mm,
nomad, I really am a nomad. I change
oh,
locations every month or two and have been to 30 plus countries, just experiencing new cultures, meeting different kinds of people. Because I think if you're in one country all the
mm,
time, you can get into this bubble of not being grateful for what you have. For example, if a lot of the listeners are in the US, we are bombarded with all of the ads about the things we don't have in our lives. Buy this, buy that,
yeah,
get a bigger house. And meanwhile, so many people in other parts of the world don't even have AC or hot water or food or clean water every day. And just seeing that reminds me of how much that I have. It gives me new perspective, stimulated my
yeah,
creativity, and I really encourage just the change of environment too can help you
yeah.
access a different side of yourself in your
That's
recovery.
right. That's right. And hopefully you get to meet some of the people, like if and when you travel, the people who are living in different cultures with different standards, different beliefs. I agree with you. I haven't actually traveled so much myself, but my
Mhm.
family has moved around a bit. And it so happened that um, I've moved around. So America is the fourth country that I'm living in. So I've
Oh.
lived in India, I've lived in Pakistan, and I've lived in the United Arab Emirates, which is basically in the Middle East. And now here we are in America. And I must say that the moving around that we did has been a huge aspect of what has also helped me to create positive change in my life because
Mhm.
what you were saying about, like the different perspectives, that is so true. It's like as long as I was, for example, living in India, I had just one idea of how life could be.
Mhm.
And in some ways, I was like, okay, just kind of accepting that this is what it is and just kind of molding myself into it the best I could,
Mhm.
regardless of the struggles that I may have. But when we moved, our first move was actually to the Middle East. And it was like a huge, that was probably the one move that was the most difficult for
Mhm.
both myself and my family to make. Well, I won't speak for the rest of my family, but certainly it was the most difficult move for me to make for a number of reasons. But one
Mhm.
of them was that it was the first time when I was not living in a joint family system. And it was
Mhm.
just my parents and my brother and sister. And we had also moved to the Middle East, and so we were in a country where we didn't speak the national language, like Arabic was the
Mhm.
national language there. And we didn't speak Arabic. We had some, I had tiny bit of English, um, fluency. Thankfully, I was still young at that time, so I learned English fast enough, and English became that bridging language that we were able to use to communicate with the people over there because there were a lot of immigrants there. So most people actually didn't speak Arabic, and they spoke so many different languages. So English sort of became like a bridge language, and that helped. Um, so there's the language barrier, but there was also like the culture was so
Mhm.
different because in India we had been living in a small town, like I mentioned, in a joint family system, and then in the United Arab Emirates, we were in a relatively like modern city context, and like I was really like that's really when um, my socially challenged self was really socially challenged because everyone I knew was left behind, and I was like, I don't even know how to make a friend or
Mhm.
keep a friend. And I became very isolated, and there were other reasons for my social isolation as well. But that was a seriously challenging move. But once I got sort of used to being there and overcame the language barrier in particular, and things got easier, it's like a whole new like opportunity, particularly in the context of academics,
Mhm.
opened up. That's, my parents put me in a school, and, when you're like over there, it was like, oh, my life became centered around school. I didn't have any friends at school as such, but
Mhm.
just going to school, studying, that became my life, which never had would have been true, I don't think, if I had continued to live in India, because over there it was all about family. And
Mhm.
so it also like gave me the time to just like in when I was like living in the United Arab Emirates, I spent pretty much all my time with my nose in a book. And
Mhm.
I was able to avoid being forced into like all those social roles and duties that I would have undoubtedly been forced into if we had continued to live in India. And in that context, like my mom did her best to train me to, learn all the things I was supposed to learn. But because it was just her and me who sort of had to struggle at that point, as opposed to having to deal with the whole extended family, she gave me a lot more leeway and a lot more freedom. And I still learned all the basic skills. Like I can cook well enough to save my life, and I'm really good at cleaning and doing all the, like, I can sew and knit and you name, like, all these kinds of householdy thingies. But I was able to do it in a context where I didn't have to face as much pressure
Mhm.
to do it and so forth. So it was like a huge blessing for me that we
Mhm.
moved.
How old were you when you moved?
I was like around 9 years old. I was just starting fourth grade when we made the move. And
Mhm.
I think it came at the right time for me.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I moved around a lot and finally settled somewhere stable when I was 10.
Mm.
So I don't
Uh,
have childhood friends before that. And I
mm,
sometimes get envious when I see people who've known each other when they were in diapers. But it's okay because I believe friendships is not about the length of time, it's the quality and depth of the connection. So
yeah.
I wanted to say before about changing your environment too, especially if you've had trauma or difficulty with your old environment, then just not having reminders of that can help you
Mm,
have more energy, feel more in your power. And if you can't escape, because a lot of people can't afford to travel, you can still change your routine and go somewhere that's different from where you went before in your
yeah.
town or area, or even meditate, doing a meditation retreat where it's silent and you just go inside yourself for
Yeah.
even one day or half a day can make a great difference. I've done as long as 21 days of meditation retreat in silence, and it's really amazing. And I recommend it for everyone to try. But everyone's style is different on what works for them.
Yeah.
So I also found journaling is really helpful for me. just to organize your thoughts, which can sometimes be
Yes.
racing, and see the patterns or just see it out in front of you makes them
Yeah.
less scary, like the less of the fear. And
Yeah.
meditation, journaling, prayer, or just whatever helps you, or going to a community who is supportive, or talking to somebody like a
Yes.
therapist or healer or coach or anyone who can hold space for you and just reflect back what they're hearing from you
Yeah.
too, to help you see yourself deeper.
Yeah. That is such a good point, Dr. Tony. And thank you for bringing that up because you're so right. Like, as helpful as a physical change in environment can be, it's not always within our control to make it happen. And in some ways, um, even if you do change the physical environment, you still need to learn how to create that kind of more calm, peaceful, separate space for yourself within anyway,
Mhm.
because even if you are in a different environment, but you don't learn that skill of going within yourself to create a new different space, you can still find yourself feeling triggered. Like,
Mhm.
again, especially if you are dealing with some kind of trauma, memories of the trauma can get triggered in any environment, even if it's a completely new, different environment. And so it's like definitely change in environment can be helpful, but it's not necessarily sufficient. And so
Mhm.
definitely that inner, like, how do you go and find something new and different within yourself? Like, let's
Mhm.
work on that regardless.
Yes, and that's everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, you carry the same baggage and problems and the lens that you view the world. It was
Yeah.
really mind-blowing to learn that we're bombarded with so many stimuli, pieces of
Yeah.
information, but we can only process maybe 1% of
Yeah.
them. So when you hear that you're only using 1% of your brain, it's a little bit of a false phrase, but you're really only taking in 1% of everything you can be around you, but it's filtered by what you
Yeah.
already believe. So your beliefs
Right.
determine what you see, what you focus on. So in reality, it's almost like our internal world creates our external world, because the
Yes.
perception, the same thing, for example, can happen
Yeah.
to two people and they take it two very different ways.
Yes. Exactly.
You're Even if you change the outside, if you don't change the inside is going to follow you.
That's
And there's a
right.
great book about mindfulness that I don't think this was their intended message, but what do you think of when you hear the title, Wherever You Go, There You Are?
Wherever you go, there you are. I could see different interpretations of that, but the first one that I would want to really share, wherever you go, there you are. Yeah, it's just that, that idea of you're always with you. Like,
Mhm,
like, I don't want to use the word escape yourself because it sounds
mhm,
bad. Like you're trying to escape yourself. But yeah, I've been there where I tried to escape myself
mhm,
and I couldn't. Like, you can't escape yourself.
mhm,
I mean, you can try, but it just doesn't work in the long term. I
mhm,
would say I spent several years trying to escape myself. Like, I was in a serious denial and suppression mode where my main coping mechanism in terms of trying to deal with whatever trauma I was going through was to just not, like, I didn't want to have to think about my own life. I didn't want to have to think about my own, like, whatever I had to do. So that was actually one of the reasons why I spent my a lot of my especially after I moved to the Middle East. I found the joy of books.
Mm-hmm.
I spent uh, the next maybe decade and a half, um, my nose buried in books because I didn't want to deal with the reality of my own life. But it's like it just keeps breaking through because at some point you have to put down the book and you have to
Mm-hmm.
face your own reality and or somebody I mean it used to send me into like fits of annoyance and feeling angry and like just my mom calling me to like go out somewhere with the family or even take a break to eat. It's like I was like, no, don't disturb me.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how many fights I've had with my mom because she would be like, stop it, put down that book, come here and eat, with the family. And I was like, no, I don't.
Yeah, many people do that. We find our own unique ways to escape,
Yeah,
whether, as you said, books or overeating, substances, even into
yeah,
relationships. We focus so much on what we can do for other people that we don't turn that attention back to
yeah,
ourselves. We avoid that.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, if that's the best you can do for some time, that's the best you can do. But it's
Mhm.
just in the long term, it doesn't work. Your own inner self rebels. It's like,
Mhm.
I got to a point where I'm like trying to continue with this strategy that's worked for me for so many years, but now I
Mhm.
can't even focus on what I'm reading. It's like, oh no, no, it's like all these thoughts intruding, can't focus, literally
Mhm.
just can't focus on my reading anymore. And so then it's like, oh, like my own inner self rebelled against, using that kind of avoidance and suppression
Mhm.
strategy. So,
Definitely.
mm,
Yeah, and the neglect that we
yeah.
give to our inner selves or the abandonment if we're not
Oh,
addressing that.
yes. Yes. I mean, talk about, like going back to that point of being like, okay, yeah, realizing I want unconditional love and being afraid I'm not going to get that unconditional love. But then you realize, oh my gosh, I have not been giving myself unconditional love.
Exactly. I have to model what I say I want. Yes.
Yes. And in some ways, isn't that like not just even a question of modeling what I want for myself, but that even if someone else is trying to love you unconditionally, but you don't love yourself
Hmm.
unconditionally, it's really hard to receive that unconditional love from someone else.
Yes.
Ah, like,
Uh,
ah,
yeah, I know that from firsthand experience too, or it's never going to feel like enough to fill that void. You have to, it
yes,
needs you too,
yes.
yourself.
It's like, or either it's like no, not enough, and you're like, oh my gosh. So that's when you can, sort of develop that sort of unhealthy dependence on other
Hmm.
folks in your relationship where you're constantly seeking the validation and so forth. But also, like the other thing that I experienced was the just sense of not being able to believe the
Hmm.
love that other people were expressing for me because I was like, no, I'm
True.
just not unlovable enough. I'm just not unlovable. Not that I'm
Not lovable enough.
exactly. I'm just not lovable enough. The love that these people are expecting, I'm not worthy of it. I'm not deserving of it because I was just full of so much negativity towards myself. I couldn't believe that other people could see
Hmm.
me
And
as 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 lovable the ways that they were expressing. I just couldn't believe it.
hmm.
So that was also really, really sad, actually. Oh, yeah. Okay, okay. So we started talking a little bit about some of the solutions in terms of how you started creating change. So, and I was keeping I just realized I, uh, 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 we have taken up a lot of time exploring these challenges, which is amazing. But let's transition a little bit more to talking about the good stuff that you're doing, the positive things that you're working on, and how you're helping other folks now that you're working with. Tell me a little more about that.
Oh, sure. I mean, there are so many ways, as I said, for healing, and each method resonates differently for each person. I have found what's personally been helpful for me is number one, truly being honest with yourself
Mhm.
and living, expressing that in some way authentically, like channeling who you are, your emotions through some form
Yeah,
of creativity. You don't, it doesn't
yeah,
have to be a traditional form like art
yeah.
or writing or music. The way you cook, the way you may
Mm,
dance or move
yeah,
or even plan your schedule is a form of creativity. So really
yes.
transmuting that, bringing your own style, just finding what relieves stress for you or
Mm,
helps you feel more like yourself. And something else that really has been helpful in my journey has been somatic work, working with a somatic practitioner or hypnotherapist, just someone who, or body worker, someone who can address the trauma and emotions that are stored
mm,
in your body. Because we remember
mm,
things, even if our conscious mind didn't form the memory, but we carry it in our bodies from when we were young, or sometimes when we've experienced severe trauma, we even our mind blocks that out, the memory, to protect us, and but it's still
yeah,
there. And
yeah.
releasing that, really learning how to hold space for ourselves and the emotions, and really letting go of shame around anything, and
Yeah.
recognizing that all emotions are valid, and learning to be kind to ourselves and give ourselves
Mm,
that self-compassion, and
yeah.
allowing it will, with love, dissolve away. But it
Mm,
helps to be guided if you don't know how to do that for yourself, and to also experience a different dynamic, because I had grown up with all that conditional love, and as you said, it's so foreign to meet someone who loved me unconditionally, and it was really hard to let that in at first. But just,
yeah.
I think repetition, repeated exposures to that really helped. And even if that needs to start with someone you have to work with professionally to give you that love, I think once you experience that and you know it on a body level, then
Mm,
it opens you up to being able to experience that more with your other relationships and with yourself.
yes. Yes. I you make so many excellent points. And you just made me think right now of my experience with quite a few of the clients that I have worked with, and I'm sure that I will continue to encounter, is like I'm oftentimes one of the first people in their lives that is modeling and practicing very different kinds of boundaries and different kinds of expressions of just being unconditionally present in a loving way. And I don't mean love in a romantic sense, but we're talking
Mhm,
about in a professional context where, about being present with someone with compassion and non-judgment. And
mhm,
I see it a lot where, you know, people like right now you triggered the memory of this one particular client I had in my mind. And she asked, she like literally she came out and she was like, why are you being so nice to me? Why are you doing this for me? And we were already like working. We had already spent several weeks working
mhm,
together. And I just offered to, take her through another session and do something with her to help her out. And she was like, why are you being so nice to me? Why are you, and I mean, just this, I was like, I mean, her surprise that someone was being that kind to her and just being, just being there without
Mhm.
demanding this or that or, whatever. And yeah, it sometimes, you you may need to find a professional, someone to
Mhm.
experience that with.
Mhm.
It's it's a bit sad that, we may find ourselves in that situation because, like, especially in our cultures, the expectation is that no, your family is always
Mhm.
there for you and with you and whatever you
Mhm.
need in terms of emotional love, support,
Mhm.
your family is there for you. Um, and in fact, in some ways, it's actually considered a no-no to go outside of your family and talk about personal things that might be going on with you because it can be perceived as bad mouthing other people in your family or
Mhm.
revealing things about your family that might create a bad image for your family and society. And so in some ways going outside of your family is not even considered a good thing. But the reality is that sometimes our family just not, I mean, not that they wouldn't even want to give us the love that we need and the care that we need, but sometimes they just don't know any better. They're doing their best
Exactly.
that they can, but it's
Yeah.
just that we need something different and we're not able to get it from them. And so then you have to find it elsewhere.
Yeah, and as you said, it's really heartbreaking that so many people haven't experienced that form
Yeah.
of unconditional love and
Mm-hmm.
positive regard and
Yeah.
just someone really being there for them and present with them, as you said. And it's
Yeah.
passed down for generations too. It's our parents didn't know better because their parents didn't know better. And
Yeah.
you actually carry it in your DNA too.
Yeah.
If, for fun facts, the intergenerational trauma can go
Mm,
back. I've seen resources that say 7 generations back, but some even
mm,
say 14 generations back.
mm.
You're carrying all of that. And so it's really a lot of work to finally address that pain and those wounds, and not just from your experience, but what your cells carry from other people's experience too.
Yeah. So it can be a lot of work, but is there any ways to make it more fun and easy?
Absolutely.
Let's
Yes.
let's
Yes.
wrap up on that happy thought.
Yes.
So
It's
tell me
true.
more.
Yes. Yes. There are. And I would say, that's why choose your healer or your healers,
Yeah.
choose someone who resonates with you. I have a lot of fun and ease with my clients. We use art, we use play, we use dancing,
Yeah.
somatic shaking, just all these ways because the healing work is heavy enough. You don't need to
Yes.
make it even more difficult.
Yeah. And I love that's actually one of the I things that I really love about exploring like different ways of creativity, as you were mentioning. And they don't even have to be the traditional ways, but because there's something about when you allow yourself to go into your creative spirit. And we all have something of a creative spirit within us. It's just part of our human nature that
Mhm.
taps into play, that taps into fun, and that way we're able to also create the ease that we desire.
Yes, absolutely.
Yay. Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Tony. I know I promised to let you go at a certain time and I actually kept you over, but I'm so thankful
Um,
for everything that you have shared with us and for giving us your time and wisdom. Do you have any last words you or last thoughts you would like to share as we wrap up?
Oh, thank you so much. Regarding the play therapy, I don't do this, but I have a colleague who brings people to experience these retreats playing with dolphins and whales in the wild.
Ah,
If that's, I think she does it very ethically in a way that doesn't disturb them much. But yeah, I'm just thinking of all kinds of creative ways to heal. It's really limitless, really infinite. If don't be, I would say don't be
yes,
discouraged if things haven't worked for you so far. Your turnaround, that where the turning point could be just ahead. It could be the next day or the next
yes,
hour. So don't give up. And I also tell everyone this, and I say it in my book and free online programs that, and of course that anyone can check in the links, or a talk I given around the world in 5+ countries now, is just truly that you are enough, worthy, lovable just by existing. You already have such an important job to do, which is to keep yourself alive and take care of yourself. Because when you do that, you can be kind to others, you can give to others from a full cup that overflows rather than depleting yourself to give to them. It's really underrated how much it takes to keep ourselves alive. We have to feed ourselves, clothe ourselves, house ourselves, and we are making an impact even if we feel like we're doing nothing, because
yes.
we choose what food we eat, what businesses we support by the things we choose to buy, for example. Where
Mm,
we choose to live leaves a carbon footprint. All these things we don't think about. So I think that
yeah,
whatever else you choose to do with your time, your career, your life purpose, that's just a bonus. So don't be so hard on yourself.
yeah.
Don't put so much pressure. Truly, if you just take care of yourself, that is enough. And
Ah,
you are deserving of good things and love simply because you exist.
ah. Thank you so much for that. And you just brought up another such key point. Ah, I wish I had another hour to talk with you. So maybe we'll have to bring you back for another hour to talk about it. But for now, I'm going to resist making any more comments myself and just end with my last reminder for our audience, which is to please make sure you check the show notes because we will be dropping Dr. Tony's links in there so you can connect with her and continue to learn with her and get the help and support you need whenever you're ready for it. And until we connect next time, I just wish you lots and lots of peace and joy.